Welcome to Improving Intimacy, a podcast to help single and married Latter-day Saints strengthen their family connections and marriages. Daniel A. Burgess is the host of Improving Intimacy. Daniel's a marriage and family therapist, father, husband, and author. Here's Daniel on this episode of Improving Intimacy.
Welcome to another episode of Improving Intimacy. Today, I'm excited to have Hope Orr here and to hear her story and what she does. And I think everybody in our audience will be curious to learn. And I think what we're going to do here is we're going to have this podcast. We're going to give it an opportunity for people to hear after we publish. And then I would personally like to invite Hope back and maybe do a live question and answer online with everybody. But let's go ahead and kick this off. And Hope, who are you and what do you do?
I am a boudoir photographer. I work with women who are wanting to celebrate their body, who want to show up more fully and, I guess, whole in the world. I don't know.
That's exciting.
What else you want
This is great. So I'm bringing you in because one of the biggest things I see within my improving in the Improving Intimacy group is how frequently both men and women are curious, interested, and wanting to find a good photographer, a boudoir photographer, and so there's a lot of questions around that. So I was excited to see somebody of your background. You did serve a mission,
Yep.
And you're now providing the service to women who desire it and want it. What got you here? What made you decide? Were you a photographer before and there's this natural transition? What was it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have been a photographer for 10 years. I grew up, my dad is a producer, a film producer for the church. And so he actually kind of mentored me as I grew up on how to take good photos. And so I've done a lot of different type of photography throughout my life. But boudoir photography is really where I find the most meaning and fulfillment. And I'm most passionate about it. And so it's, I guess, more of a recent, in the last few years, journey that I've been on, offering this to other people and then also experiencing it for myself.
So tell me a little bit more about that journey, that experience. As you're talking, the audience obviously can't see, but your face lightens up. It glows as you're talking about. This is a great opportunity, and we're going to get into maybe some of the pushback or the controversies around it. You're shaking your head, yes. Mm-hmm. I personally know that as I've entered into this profession and kind of stretched the boundaries around sexual health and insight. So what am I seeing when I hear you say journey and experience and passion? Yeah. What's making you glow about it?
Yeah, so when I returned from my mission a number of years ago, I remember my mission president inviting me to pray every day to get married. And I think that's kind of funny that we tell 20-year-olds to pray for that. And
get married in 6 months when you return. And yes.
Yep. And so I was doing that. And one day it occurred to me, I realized, okay, if this actually happened, let's say God answers my prayer, I'm going to find someone this year, get married this year. Am I ready for that? And I realized I had a lot of shame around my body, around my sexuality, around my sexual desires, and also a lot of, how do you put it? I did not feel like I was really educated or prepared for that type of step in my life.
When you say step, what are you talking about? Sex,
yes,
intimacy?
Yep. All of the above. About, I guess, with the idea of, okay, I'm going to get married and all of a sudden I'm going to start having sex with a man and I don't know really anything about my own body, about sex, about, so many different things. And so it was quite miraculous, I guess. I was shortly after that occurred to me, I was given people and resources in my life to be able to start more, I guess, a self-development journey for myself and learn, and also like release a lot of the shame around my sexuality.
So pause, because
Yes.
you did something that I'm very impressed with, and that I usually only see occur after marriage, is you had this insight, this awareness that you weren't ready. You didn't understand your own sexual health, your own sexual desires. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Was it literally that? Was it an epiphany? Was it in your prayers? Was it walking down the street? Or what allowed you to have that insight? If I could ask it, I realize it's still ambiguous, but what was that discovery before marriage?
I know part of it was looking at, okay, how do I want to create my life? And realizing, like, okay, if I'm going to have what I want in life, I need to be in a place right now where I'm ready for it. And I think that is applicable to any point in our life. Like, okay, you want more money? Do you feel ready for that? Or different things. And so I believe that we have to like look at what we want to create, and then look at what beliefs, what narrative are we, saying in our head that is keeping us from getting to that point. So I've done a lot of self-development in my life. And so that was definitely part of it, was, okay, if I want to get married, what is holding me back? And so.
Amazing. I can't tell you how important that is. I mean, there's kind of, I see, maybe if we categorize it in two or three ways, those who don't have that awareness at all, or have this general perspective of things will work out in the marriage, or will discover these things. Yeah. I mean, they don't even, and by the way, this is not a criticism. This is just how we're trained as in relationships. Our parents never taught us how to think about this. Mm-hmm. So this is why I'm finding this really impressive and fascinating, is you're falling into, and so there's a second group that may do what you just did. Says, yeah, I don't think I'm really ready for marriage. There's aspects about myself. I know we've had children who've been married who are concerned about body image. And so there's that group where they're kind of aware, but their course of action to improve that is either absent, or they don't know how, mm-hmm. or again, they think it's going to just work out in the marriage.
Yep.
But you fall into, I mean, I'm going off the cuff here. There's probably more dynamics to this, but it seems like you fall into a third group where you not only had this insight, this wonderful insight, but you had the awareness of asking questions that maybe stretched you or encouraged yourself to be prepared way before that ever happened. Mm-hmm. That's fascinating to me. Are you able to, I know you kind of answered that already, but where did you get, do you think that's intrinsic to you? Or do you feel like your parents taught you? What allowed you to have that skill?
Yeah, let's see. I definitely grew up in a home where we were always encouraged to learn and grow and improve ourselves, and particularly, I guess, seek after truth and study for ourselves. And so that was a big thing, was, I guess, finding answers for myself. So that's part of it.
I love that. So you were encouraged throughout your life to be an individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to create your own relationship with yourself or with Heavenly Father, or whatever that is you're asking yourself the questions and determining your own path. I love that. Is that about right?
Yeah. And I think also a big part of it with my own faith journey, with my own sexual health journey, as I learned more, especially about having a healthy relationship with my body and with my sexuality, realizing that I get to be my own person. And so I think that also plays a huge role mm-hmm. in that, in realizing that I can find truth for myself. I can find answers. I don't have to look to other people outside of me to feel good about myself or to create whatever life it is that I want to.
Was that immediate? I know I cut you off before you started going to more of what you did. You got resources. Did you have that awareness before those resources, or is that what kind of developed out of seeking out resources and helping, or both?
I'd say both. It was a mix for sure. Yeah.
And do you mind if we explore what you did to improve and stretch yourself and to be more authentic? What course of action did you take?
One huge thing was learning about mindfulness and meditation, learning about what was going on in my mind, what fears I had, what insecurities I had. And then another, I was in a Facebook group and someone had shared a post. I don't know if I can share names.
Oh,
or not.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Please.
So
the whole purpose of my group is to provide good resources.
Great.
Share away.
Awesome. I was in a women's Facebook group and somebody shared that there was going to be a workshop by Emily Thevenin. She owns Honey Rose Haven. It's a nonprofit organization and she's a sex educator. And so I knew that I needed to talk to someone just to learn and figure out my body and stuff. And I was really scared. I needed someone who was safe. And so I emailed her and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this workshop, but I feel a little funny being this young, single Mormon girl showing up to, it was I don't know, I think it was a honeymoon, something having to do with, sex, obviously. And I was I don't want to be this uneducated little young girl showing up. And so she invited me to come have a one-on-one session with her. And that completely changed my life.
Thank you. Yeah. And please don't hold back the tears if you don't want. This is emotional work. This is powerful. This is exciting. And the audience wants to hear that. What was it? What would you tell somebody who's interested in doing a course like that? How to be prepared, or what was it like for you?
Meaning working with going in and working with Emily.
Yeah. Was it awkward, or kind of tell us what you would expect, or what a new person would expect going into something like that?
That's a great question. Well, for one thing, Emily made it so, I just felt so safe. I didn't even know her, but I just felt so safe and so understood, and, especially with her response, because I told her hey, I'm kind of scared. And she responded and said, I totally get it. No worries. I can relate. And so just knowing that she understood where I was coming from, and then going in and having that one-on-one session with her where we just sat and talked. And, the first few sessions I had, it was releasing just a lot of shame around all sorts of things, thinking that I had a pornography addiction when I was young, and looking back, I had never even seen pornography, but I thought that I was, or thinking I had a masturbation addiction, and, all these different things, and feeling so much shame, and being able to talk with someone who was educated, who understood, so many of these things. And it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't it was a confessional or anything like that.
No, I follow you.
Okay.
You're having these discoveries.
Yeah.
And you're recognizing so you said it was a workshop, but it sounds like it was kind of a one-on-one.
This one, because I was afraid to do the workshop. She said, come in and work and have a one-on-one session with me. So this was just me and her. So as
you're talking, you're discovering, oh my goodness, I really didn't have a porn addiction. And masturbation wasn't even an issue.
Yeah.
It was just part of my healthy development.
Yeah. And I mean, I grew up thinking I was going to go to hell, or I wasn't going to, I wouldn't be able to have kids, or, something, I was going to be punished because
you're having this behavior.
Yeah. And so there was just so much with that. And then also just so much shame about how I learned about sex, all those different things that, we all have experiences growing up with whatever, with our bodies, with sex, where we tend to feel shame around those things. And so being able to talk with someone and be validated in my experience, and just being heard and having a safe place, and also a safe place to ask questions. I asked all sorts of questions. And so the beginning was a lot of...
You're the perfect client. You're coming in with
so many people have told me that before.
And it's fascinating because we get a lot of people, and again, this is not criticism. It's one thing as a provider of somebody who's doing... My passion is to improve sexual health and sexual awareness. And I get so so many times clients coming in, male and female, and I want to improve this, but they don't want to ask the hard questions. And because there's some preconceived ideas there. Now, you brought up pornography. I'm going to put you on the spot here. We talked about this beforehand. You get to say whether or not you want to answer. I think this is important because I work with so many people. A pornography addiction is defined anything from I had a lustful thought a year ago. I saw an Instagram model 3 months ago to I'm looking at hardcore porn 5 hours a day and masturbating multiple times to it. What was it about your behavior that gave you the impression you were addicted to porn or you had a porn problem?
Yeah, so part of it was I masturbated, all growing up, and I, thought that was really bad. And then as far as the pornography part, a big thing was feeling aroused. Like I just translated, oh my gosh, I see, whatever. Like, so the way I found out that I didn't have a pornography issue was actually sitting in a session with an LDS therapist, and she had made a comment of, you've probably seen more than girls your age, than, the typical girl your age as far as like inappropriate images or whatever. Okay. And I sat there and I was like,
so I'm gonna because we like specificity. No. Jumping around is beautiful. I love it. What I like to do is specificity. Did I say the word right? When we're talking about these things, because again, as you get more familiar with this group, you're going to see, and the problem around sexual health is we all have our own definitions. So when you say inappropriate, what I think I'm hearing is saying you've probably seen more women naked, or what do you mean when you say inappropriate?
Good question. So like a PG-13 movie, like if a couple starts making out or whatever, like not even like sex, but stuff that would
visually stimulating.
Yes.
For you.
Yeah. And so the therapist because I had told her, I think I have a pornography addiction. And she one day said, you've probably seen more than maybe the typical girl your age. And I was like, no, actually, I don't think I have. Like, I've only seen things in, like PG-13 movies, but like I hadn't ever like seen, someone having sex or like, I don't know. I like not even. It was just the fact that genitals.
You were getting aroused from what you were seeing.
Yeah, and because I had that desire to see or to keep watching or whatever, but
so that was going against the for strength of youth by
yes, yeah.
So that's I think that's where we're getting at here.
So yeah, it's by definition. I don't know that I would say it was a pornography addiction.
But if you were to compare it to the for strength of youth and you're seeking out these feelings, so the guilt was springing from that. And as you were talking with your various coach or therapist, this was coming to light. And so your LDS therapist was saying, so continue with that. What was she implying by you seeing more?
I don't even remember what the conversation was, but that was a moment in time where I realized, like, oh, I actually don't think I have seen more than the typical girl my age, but I have placed so much shame on feeling desires, on feeling turned on, aroused.
It's bad.
Yeah. I remember when I was a little girl praying that God would take those arousal feelings away. I hated them. And I remember saying, Heavenly Mother, like, why would you give those to me? And so... yeah, so this journey that I started going on after my mission was really amazing in being able to release so much shame around my body and my sexuality, and then also really just stepping more fully into being a whole, confident, beautiful woman.
I can't emphasize how much and how important that message is. We hear this, I hear this a lot from young men. They get an erection, and it's one thing, and some people feel like, I'm making excuses for young men. Well, you're usually it's coming from females saying it doesn't have to happen, but young men will experience an erection for not just a few seconds, 30 minutes, an hour as a teenager. And what do you do with that? I'm hearing clearly not the same biological response, but as a female, I think this happens a whole lot more than women are either comfortable in sharing or rightfully so. So in a long way, I'm saying thank you. Thank you for that vulnerability. Because I think there's a lot of women out there who need to hear that. The fact that they struggle with these urges, the sensations, the desires, and you're praying for it to go away. That occurs too in women. We don't talk about that a lot because it's visually noticeable in men. It's like, it's there, what do you do? And it doesn't just go away. Yeah. So you're having these discoveries, and I appreciate you sharing that, because that is something I think is important for both men and women to hear. It happens there, and it needs to be talked about. So what do you do? I jokingly, but I'm being serious when I say a young man can go into a donut shop and an erection comes. Are they breaking the principles in the Strength of Youth manual by wanting to go get it? I'm not trying to be silly, but if you were raised as a young man who got erections out of the wind, the joke's there. If the wind blows, you're horny, and there's truth to that, because your body is developing, and you're discovering that, and you're discovering now in your resources, in your therapy, that's normal. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. Well, and I think so many women, when like growing up, when you do feel those feelings of arousal, will try and shut it off. We'll try and numb it. We'll try and ignore it. And then that is such a disservice to ourselves when people are ready to get married and to be sexually active, and realizing, or not even realizing, but having a hard time being able to feel those feelings again, or when they do feel those feelings and it's in a place where they're allowed to, they feel so dirty and unworthy of, being able to feel those feelings.
Right there. That's the concept I think is so hard for a lot of potentially married and even married couples to understand, is because we convey this idea that it will work out. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Yeah. But you're well aware that's not the case. And it goes against every spiritual, doctrinal, and psychological principle out there. Is we train ourselves to do one thing, and we expect one day, just because of one event, we will do the opposite. You spend a good decade of your life before you get married resisting, rejecting, suppressing these feelings. It doesn't just come back beautifully. Yep. So now we're at this phase. You're discovering, you're exploring, you're getting the right help. Where does it go from there? What do you want to tell us? Yeah.
So after I worked through a lot of the heavy stuff, releasing a lot of shame around my sexuality, I, being a photographer, I decided that I wanted to do a boudoir session for myself, as a young single adult. And so I remember like setting up my camera, putting the timer on, and like running over to the bed.
And you're literally taking your own shots.
Yep. Yeah. And I was doing it for myself to, we don't often give ourselves the opportunity as men or women to like really see our body fully and appreciate it and love it, for, where it's at. And so my first experience doing my own little boudoir session, it was in a hotel room. I was on a work trip, and that changed the way that I saw my body. And, of course I had been doing my work, in other areas to more fully love and accept my body. But that was something that I was like finally in a place to see myself and to like own my body and see that it's beautiful. And I guess the short version is I, over the years, have been able to see how that has helped other women, and myself. And so that is something that I'm so passionate about offering to women, as an opportunity to step fully into their body and to really celebrate it and see it for the beautiful body that it is.
Now I want to jump into that, but before we do, I want to bring up, because I know there's a lot of people out here asking, have you gotten criticism for this being just a version of porn, and how have you addressed that? Yeah. I'm just going to leave it open like that. What are the obstacles you faced as you've, so what we're hearing is this has been life-changing for you. There's clearly a blessing that's come along with this. Now, I don't want to make an assumption. Have you gotten pushback?
Yeah.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for a long time, I wasn't really sharing with, the public or my circle that I was doing these or offering these.
It's more word of mouth.
Word of mouth. And, I was doing portrait photography for
So
women.
and why was that? Because the shame around it, or?
Yeah, because I was afraid that, something that I was afraid about when I started my sexual health journey was that people would think I was promiscuous because, this is a single girl. She's not getting married in the near future. She shouldn't be looking into this stuff right now. And so that was, the same with the boudoir stuff is, you're not married. Why would you want to do this unless you're being promiscuous? And maybe that's just a story in my head,
Oh, it's not just a story in your head. It's alive and real, as I think you already know.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until this last year that I decided, this has been so meaningful and fulfilling. I'm going to do this, pursue it more full time. And so I decided that if I wanted to help other women be brave enough to do this, I needed to be brave enough to share. And so I shared a photo, and I was in a robe. I was very covered up, but I shared it, on my Facebook page and Instagram, and just shared my story of how I became a boudoir photographer, and why it's so important to me. And I did get some messages and some people in my circle reaching out to different people around me saying, "Is Hope a pornography photographer?" And people telling me they were concerned about me.
Of course.
Yeah.
And well, I say that kind of sarcastically, right? So how did you respond to them? Or did you?
Yeah. So, well, that was, it was an opportunity for me to look inside and kind of get more clear on, okay, am I? Maybe I am, just like being willing to look at it. But, so a response is, "Hey, thanks for sharing your thoughts. I would love to talk about this more." And some people didn't really want to talk about it, and I understand, that they're coming from a place of their own triggers and their own hurt and pain, and their own understanding, and also it's like, okay, I'm more than willing to discuss this.
Was the reception or criticism better or worse with men or women, or was it kind of the same?
It was mostly from men.
Yeah, I'm smiling over here.
Yeah.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
You can't even own your own sexuality,
Yeah.
your own pursuits without somebody,
Yeah.
a man coming in.
And that was something that was really frustrating is, okay.
So you were defending yourself mostly against what men were thinking. I mean, I'm sure there was women there too, but
there were women too, and I do have to say I don't get a ton of kickback, but I did in the beginning, and I've kind of decided, okay, I'm going to keep pursuing this and keep just doing my thing because I'm seeing how it's changing lives.
And forgive me, I don't want to focus just on that, breaking through that barrier, but I do like to emphasize it at least briefly here, because I think that's what holds so many of us back, is how do we get through that? I know when I first published my article on masturbation and how it's a healthy part of development. I mean, we were teaching this as a church actually as early as 1927, I think. And then things kind of, the way we approached it was differently. But here I had a science-based article that was in line with my professional teachings. And I remember the day I was clicking the publish button, I was shaking because of the concern. I knew my relationship with my Heavenly Father, my family, the work I've done with clients, and the beautiful progress I've seen, but there was this fear, the shame of how I will be perceived and having a breakthrough. And we don't talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. This was would it be fair to say it was scary? Or
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
How did you deal with that? I mean, there was a day that you made a decision to go live with your website and say, this is who I am.
Yep.
Again, I don't want to make the focus all about that, but I think it's important for at least others to see what it was like for you to go through.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing the emotions or feelings you went through?
Yeah. With this and with my faith, I've had a lot of experiences and opportunities where I have had to show up and say, this is me and this is what I'm choosing to do with my life. And it's painful to see, people I love and what they respond with. And so part of me, some of it was, okay, I'm just going to do it. And I have to pretend that all those people that I see in my mind that are watching me aren't actually watching me. and then processing through the shame later, or, the feelings that are triggered once I'm like, oh yeah, yep, they're watching and they're now responding. And, so. Ooh.
You come across as a very insightful person. I know I've already pointed out. I think there's a lesson there is you're internalizing it. You're not just saying, screw you.
Yeah.
You're saying, okay, all right, I see what you're saying here, but then you go off and you do your internal work later.
Yes.
Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I would say, for people who may have to do similar things in their lives, if I could go back to my younger self who felt scared about showing up more fully because of how people would, treat me or think, I would invite myself to have more compassion for where I was at. And realize, like, you don't need to show up. You don't need to explain yourself if you don't want to, and it will come. And that's something that I have seen with my life. I've been doing boudoir photography for a number of years now, and maybe for someone it's a shorter amount of time, but for me, it took a little bit for me to get into a place where I was really, I guess you could say, embodying where I stood and felt confident enough to make the step and to let myself be seen. So
that is beautiful. That's a lesson I hope people take away from this message here. That's beautiful. So what are you doing? What's been your experience working with clients? So tell us both, I'll let you choose, but both the successes and maybe the struggles of doing this work.
Yeah.
And by the way, are you exclusively women, or do you work with men also?
Yeah. So right now I work with women and couples. And so I know I've had a number of men reach out to me, which I think is amazing. I think that's so awesome that men have this desire, because I know that it's not, our body image and insecurities and things, that's not just a female problem. And so if men want to be photographed, what I will do is I'll do a couple session, and then I'll take some photos of the wife or, the woman and then of the man. I don't at the moment photograph men on their own. Yeah.
So tell us some of your success stories.
Yeah.
And also the struggles.
Yeah. So one of the my favorite things about working with women is being able to have them come in, one-on-one, and being able to give them this experience. My boudoir sessions are a luxury experience. They get to come and they get their hair and makeup done. They get just well taken care of. Yes, pampered. Thank you. They come, they get pampered, and this is all about them and getting to celebrate their body and own their body. And that, being able to see that with each individual woman is just so fun. And then bringing them in to the studio after they get their hair and makeup done. And it's like this girl party. I have my hair and makeup artist and me and our client, and, we're pulling out outfits from the client wardrobe, and just seeing, how, they're nervous, obviously, a little bit, but also just excited for something that's a new experience and a fun experience. And so that is something that's very exciting and fun for me that I love. And then I guess, let's see, I also, with my clients, I've worked with a number of women in different phases of their life. I've, worked with women who are pregnant, with women who who just had a baby and want to, embrace their body where it's at. I had one client, this is one of my favorite experiences. I photographed a client, and 6 months later, she was diagnosed with cancer. And so she had those photos. We don't always know what's going to happen in the future, but being able to photograph right now, the phase we're in. And she was diagnosed with cancer, spent, around 9 months in bed, getting treatments and things. And she's now cancer-free. And about a month ago, I was able to photograph her again. And that was just such a special experience for both of us to have, done it before. And then after everything she's gone through and showing up and just hearing her story and her experience with, oh, my body isn't perfect. It's not where I want it to be, but like showing up anyways and allowing herself to be photographed. And she loves those pictures, and I guess like both the pictures before she had cancer and the pictures afterward, that was just a really, I was honored to be able to be part of that.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Have you had clients where they struggled with self-image and were in a more severe way, and use this as an opportunity to help that? And did you have an experience where doing this helped them overcome some of their negative self-images?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say almost everyone I've worked with, has had body image issues, and they'll often share with me beforehand, like I'm a little insecure about this part of my body, or but I had one client, and I will say I have permission to share these experiences. I made sure I did that before I came. I had one client who you would never expect, that she, I guess, didn't like her body, because according to like cultural expectations about how your body should be, like she checks off that list, and I photographed her. And I remember in this session, like I hadn't, the photos weren't edited or anything, but I turned the camera around to show her the photo, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, "I've never liked photos of myself until today." And yeah, it was just amazing. And then I sent her the gallery, and she, reiterated that again. And then I got a text from her later that she said I could share. And she said that she had struggled with eating disorders for 13 years of her life, and how this experience, being able to see her body and how beautiful and amazing it was just completely life-changing for her.
That is, I can't imagine what that would be like for somebody. I mean, I think we do men a disservice thinking, you brought it up a little earlier, we have image issues, but we're not expected to. We struggle with this thing. I think men would benefit from maybe something similar, maybe not the exact same thing, but to hear that, because I work with quite a few clients. So I'm going to kind of blend a topic here, because I think you're probably one of the best people to inform me on this, since you're working on the side of helping women to embrace their beauty, their naturalness, their authenticity. As a male therapist, it's interesting because I'll get both. I'll get women who want to work with me to improve that aspect of their life, primarily because it's been men in their lives who've defined that for them. And so in a therapeutic way, they use me as a confrontation to, not in the negative sense, but you know what, you're a man. I don't want to be afraid of this anymore, which is interesting because I value that. That's actually an appropriate role of therapy. We do that a lot, kind of exposure and getting used to, I want to be confident with this. While at the same time, I may get women who want to work on this, but because I am a male therapist, it's scary. It's hard to break through for that. And I always respect that, of course. What are your thoughts? Do you feel, I realize there's no absolute answer here, but if you were to coach a therapist, a coach who is a male, what would you say? I realize this is the big question. how would you say is a good way to help women feel safe?
In therapy or in general,
exploring
in
their,
life?
if they're coming to therapy and wanting to improve their sexual health, their negative self-image, I guess maybe, have you worked with a man, or is that why you haven't worked with men in the past? Are you wanting to find that as a safe space with other women? What are your thoughts? It's a really broad question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
In other words, how can us men support and help and be better?
Yeah. My first thought is, every woman, you already know this, but every woman is different in their need for, how to heal that. And so some women, for them, they're in a space where they're ready to have a man who is a safe place to listen and to talk about it. And then for other women, I probably wasn't one of those women. I needed to talk to another woman because that was safe for me.
So let me give you a little bit more context.
Okay.
I have a lot of men reaching out to me who would crave for their wives, their girlfriends, fiancés to do this.
Yeah.
And for I sincerely, so there's a dynamic here. I think a lot of men are afraid to even suggest it because the perception around sexual health and sexualizing everything, it's a fascinating place we're at, because I think we're breaking through a lot of barriers, but I think men have this stigma already. If we talk about seeing a woman who is in lingerie as beautiful, we're automatically sexualizing it. Yep. So we'll get a husband who's saying, gosh, I know my wife in all her pregnancies, in her middle age, is sexy. She is beautiful. She doesn't see it. Mm-hmm. I think a boudoir session would be helpful for her. Mm-hmm. But even suggesting that can come across as invasive or not appropriate. Yep. Is there, it seems like, what do men do? What do you suggest? I'm sure you've seen this dynamic play out. Yeah. Is there, and again, I know everybody's different, but what would be your general suggestion in husbands or?
I love this question. So if I had a friend who came to me to ask me that, I would say start out by telling your wife, I'm afraid that you're going to think, or I'm afraid the story is in my head that I'm going to come across as this way, and this is not what my intention is. But, I've found this amazing boudoir photographer, Hope, who helps women and, focuses on, helping them feel better and more confident in their body. And I really love you, and I would love for you to see how I see you.
I like that. So in other words, put it in terms that are value-centered to her. Yeah. Not, I want this. Yeah. Or I think you should do this so you can see what I see. That's all me-centered. That's as opposed to, you're beautiful, and I would love to show you what I see. Yeah. I mean, it's still kind of me, but it's focusing on her. I really like that approach.
Well, and I think a huge thing, even, take boudoir photography out of it, just having that communication, like creating that safe space between one another where you can communicate, hey, I want to share this thing and I'm a little afraid of how it's going to come across. So let me explain my fears a little bit, and then let me explain what I'm wanting to say. And of course, you're the therapist. I'm not the therapist. I don't know everybody's relationship or, how to navigate those things completely. But that is something that's been really helpful in my life. So,
well, no, it's interesting. I talk with hairstylists or photographers, and they are pretty much, my wife's a vocal coach, and she says a lot of her sessions are pretty much therapy. You go to a very sensitive place, and I think it is valuable insight. You're in a position to do something very, very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, it's, I don't know if you compare it's more vulnerable or not, but it's definitely just as vulnerable as therapy. You're going in and you're sharing an intimate side, your insecurities. You're showing up to this stranger most likely, and I'm bearing pretty much all. And so, no, I think your insights are very valuable. You're having to navigate these very sensitive, fragile topics that are triggering for a large amount of people.
Yeah.
This is excellent. So in general, what do you recommend? When do you feel it's time for, should all women do this?
That's a good question. You have all the best questions apparently today. Every time you ask a question, I'm like, that's the best question. So one thing I strongly suggest, this is also kind of linked to your last question about what can men or husbands do, is I have a private Facebook group for women. And that's a space it's a support group, it's a safe space, and it's a fun group. We have fun things that we post, and women can go and ask questions. And so a lot of times I will encourage women who aren't sure if they're in a space to get a boudoir session to go and join that group, because it allows them to get a feel for me. And that is incredibly important. Like you said, like this is a very vulnerable experience that they're signing up for. And so that's one thing, is allowing them to get to know their photographer, to decide if this is a safe place, and also to help them, develop that trust. And then I think every woman's journey is her own. And so for some women, I guess to answer your question, the short version is, do I think that the only way to feel confident and amazing in your body is to go get naked and take photos? No. Do I think that it's an amazing, incredible opportunity for women to be able to love and embrace their full body? Yes. And so for some women, they may decide that it's not for them, and that's totally okay. And then also I'll have clients who, for some of them, they want to come in and just show a shoulder, and that's okay. And for others, they want to do completely nude, and so I think it's important, for me as a photographer to meet my clients where they're at, and it's also important for individuals to meet themselves where they're at.
Excellent. I love that response. So what are your aspirations? We've heard the struggles, the journey you went through to get here. Who are you now? If you were to describe yourself, what has this success made you? How would you describe yourself as? So let's talk about everything as a person, your sexual health. What are your views on sexual development? Let's go anywhere you're willing to go.
Cool.
Who are you now?
Yeah, that's a good. Sorry, I don't know.
I warned you.
That's a good question.
We were going to go everywhere here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that has come from my life experiences, and of course my career choice, is that I've become my own person. And I have come to realize that I get to be in charge of filling my own needs. And I get to give myself permission to show up as a whole person, as someone who can create a life that I love. And a wonderful thing that I think has come from that, and I realize that this isn't always what happens for everyone, but I have been able to find myself in a relationship that is incredibly wonderful and fulfilling, and there is just so much trust and communication, and that is a big part because I did the work for myself. And I believe whether people are in a relationship or not, they can do that for themselves. They can come to discover themselves. And so sometimes people are like, oh, I'm in a relationship now. I wish I had gotten a boudoir shoot when I was single. And I'm like, you can do this for yourself, whether you're single or not, Yes. It gets to be for you. And so I would say as I have embraced my sexuality, as I have done what I call my inner work around loving and accepting my body and myself, it has transformed the way that I show up in life. I feel more confident, and I feel like I'm able to own myself and my choices far more than I ever used to. I used to be a huge people pleaser. I used to care so much about what people think, and I still, find myself in those moments because we're all human. But I would say as I have done the work to have a healthy relationship with myself and my body, it has completely transformed, I would say, every aspect of my life.
I realize it's a journey. There isn't one point where you say, yeah, I'm done. This is great. But do you feel like you can now experience desire or orgasm or masturbate and feel like there's no guilt here?
Yeah.
What's that level?
Yeah.
I love it. I wish you guys can see because she's glowing again. It's like, I own this. Yeah. There is no shame.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm seeing?
Yes. Yeah. And realizing like that God didn't just make these things for me so I, for only the use of when I'm going to create a baby or, only the use for a man or anything like that. But
have you ever talked about masturbation this openly?
No.
How are you doing?
I mean, I have with my circle, with friends, we talk about masturbation and all the things, sex and stuff. I've never really done this like with a man that I had. I mean, you and I just met today in person. And
you appear very comfortable. Is that what you're experiencing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
This is great. I love it. And I forgot what your question was.
This is what we do. We get really organic here.
Yeah.
So the question was originally, do you experience guilt around that at all? Are you able to truly bask in it? Like it's a joyful, I mean, from your facial expression, it seems like that's the case now is you own it and you get to thoroughly use it as a part of happy living.
Yes.
Would that be a fair description?
Yeah. And just like you said, it's still a journey, right? And so I am still discovering things about myself and my body. And I very strongly believe that, we talk about our sexual ability or powers or, whatever you want to call that, as, obviously a way to create human life. And I also see it as a way to create, spiritually or energetically my whole life. And so, I don't feel shame around that anymore. And and there's still things to learn, but it's I don't know. It's amazing.
Still things to learn. What you kind of looked off in the distance. Were you thinking of something specific or what do you mean by that? I mean, I agree with the general principle. Right? We're always learning, but was there something specific that you're thinking of?
Yeah. Let's see. Still things to learn, meaning like, okay, I know how to orgasm, but that doesn't necessarily mean I know all the different ways to experience pleasure in my life. And, how can I continue and not even experiencing pleasure, like
it's not just about the orgasm. You're saying it's like, what is my body experiencing?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
And slowing down with my body and being present and, like giving my body my attention and loving it. And so
a lot of people refer to, for women, OMGS. Was that a resource you used, or what do you do, or how do you go about experiencing or learning for you? Is it just a natural thing for you, or are you using? Yeah,
this is interesting. Getting very specific. I've used OMGS, and I haven't used it in a while because it wasn't super working for me. It wasn't my flavor.
Okay.
And so, but it is something I'd like to revisit, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I think just like trying different
mindfulness.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and that's I refer to masturbation as self-pleasure, and I think that like mindfulness and self-pleasure they get to be something that's hand in hand. It's very fun.
It's not surprising because you started your journey off with mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting because I think as a faith culture, we really do try to teach what mindful is. Think about what other people are feeling, try to teach empathy, but there's this very judgmental side that shuts that down. But you came in with mindfulness, being aware of, you learned early on, what is your body experiencing? And so resources like OMGYes maybe weren't the best for you because you're more of an, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just interpreting what you're saying here. It appears like you're more of an introverted person. You're insightful about what's going on. You know something's wrong, and so you explore that. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Well, no. So as far as OMG, yes, it was like the techniques
It wasn't working for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just wasn't right for you.
Yeah. Like if we're talking on a physical level, like so many things in the beginning, I had so much pain down in my sexual organs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had to address that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, we are getting very specific here. But that was a big thing that also was, I wasn't ready. I can't have sex because I can't even, everything hurts down there. So.
Yep. So you had to address that, and you recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's, again, this is something we don't talk about.
Yeah.
And is common. Whether it's because it's biology, we also see I always butcher the word vaginismus, which is the painful intercourse. Probably butchering. See, my dyslexia always kicks in when I go live or try to teach something on board. Somebody's going to call me out and say, "You said it wrong. You're a therapist. You should know." I know. So sometimes it's caused by physical development and or by our perceptions of our sexual health. And so that's an important topic. And a lot of people don't realize they have painful sex, and it could be because of the good girl syndrome or whatever. And so you discovered that and you're able to address it. So you're having to handle those issues.
Yep.
So back to photography. Thank you for going there. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, you've gone through this journey of improving your own self-image, of improving your sexual health, and thank you for being so vulnerable with that. I personally am, that's my goal, my aspiration in life is when we can treat, I really truly believe, whatever people's definition of sacred is, I really believe we could talk about masturbation, we could talk about intimacy, we could talk about how we overcome these things without it being weird, without it being creepy. And it's about really creating a culture of how do you masturbate? What does that look like? Removing the sexual stigma or whatever you want to call it around it. What is your aspiration as you engage in this work? Do you have a hope or a goal of what do you see the outcome here? If you had it, your wish, what would it look like?
My wish is to help as many women as I possibly can to own who they are, to own their desires, to own what they want in life, and to not feel shame for it, to be unapologetic about showing up and speaking out and being heard and being seen and being totally all right, and what's the word? Unapologetic is the word I keep thinking about. Being unapologetic about being themselves.
And you're talking not just their physical self, you're talking about their whole person.
Oh, absolutely. Their whole being. Because the physical stuff, the boudoir, it seems like it's just something that's happening on the outside. But, with every client I work with, no matter where they're at in their own journey, it is an experience that they have, an opportunity that they get to do their inner work. And to show up physically, but also like emotionally, mentally, all the different ways to show up more fully.
I'm going to circle back around because I love your message there. I love the aspiration. It's not just about looking good in your skin. The work you're doing is intrinsic. Mm-hmm. It's how to be you. Yeah. In our previous communication and setting this up, the word authentic comes up. I've said this before, I think pop psychology has really watered that down in that meaning, but there's a power behind that to be able to show up without judgment as much as possible and not fear the impressions and perceptions of what other people. I have had to force myself into that place because I'm actually a very private person. People don't think that because of my public presence, but I do value what people think, but being able to show up authentically. So I want to wrap around using that thought. I work occasionally, more than occasionally, unfortunately, with women who have been emotionally mistreated in their relationship, on a big spectrum. I'm thinking one. I'm trying to keep it as vague as possible here. I think this is relatable to a lot of people, who's been in a relationship for years, and the spouse had particular views of what she should look like. I'll put it that way. And so now that she's coming to herself, she's trying to find a way to, sometimes I say reclaim, but she acknowledges she's never had a claim on her body, her identity. And one of the exercises I offer, the variation, there's variations of this. I call it the naked assessment. You stand in front of the mirror. Oh, you're saying yes. Good.
Yes.
And I'll be honest with you, as a male therapist, I knew this was an effective tool because I learned it from my female sex educators. But implementing it was always interesting because I'm totally comfortable with offering this, but recognizing some women struggle with it. But what the way I approach this is, I want you to stand in front of a mirror in all your glory. You're getting out of the shower. You're looking at yourself, and you have a sheet of paper, your phone, whatever is safe for you. Put 3 columns on: like, dislikes, indifferent. And what I say is, I want you to go through, not like, oh, my legs, I like them. I want you to look at your toes. I want you to see yourself. You've been taught to not see yourself. I want you to first start to learn to see yourself. And then as you go through, I want you to write down, I like my toes, I like my toenails, I like my ankles, all the way up or down, or however you want to approach it. If you're done in 5 minutes, you're doing it wrong. It should be like maybe 15 minutes a day for a week. And you write down the likes, dislikes, and indifference. And a lot of people go into that saying, oh, the likes. Yeah, I own that. I actually challenge them with this question. I'll say, why do you like it? Where did that perception come from? Is it because you have that perfect nose that is on social media and you like it because it conforms? To start reclaiming or to defining, what do I actually like? That's a very difficult thing, as you can imagine. Where I'm going with this is, sometimes I work with those who have been abused around their self-image, and they've done that, but there's still this very burden, heavy. You're shaking your head. Yes, I think you know where I'm going with this. I'm curious, I guess maybe from your expression, you're saying yes. Have you had to address this in your work? And have you found this type of work to help those individuals to see themselves in a new light? I think we've kind of answered this, but I want to ask that very specifically, because I know there are women out there who've done everything to reclaim their identity. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. First, my thought is, so I've done the mirror experience a little bit differently. I stand in front of the mirror and I just take myself in. And I've had times where I sit there and I feel so much shame, about, like with COVID. I had, I lost weight and then I gained weight, and I had so much shame about how I gained weight. And I knew in my head, like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, blah, blah, blah. Like we know with our head, but then we're feeling something different in our body. And so sitting in front of the mirror and allowing myself to cry and to say, like, wow, yeah, I feel this way. I feel this way, and really fully holding space for our heart and ourselves to feel those feelings. That's one way. One practice that I use, encourage a lot of people to do, because when we finally give ourselves permission to feel those feelings, that's when we allow them to move through our body, so we don't have to carry them. So that's one thing. And then as far as with boudoir photography, I will say boudoir photography will not save you. And I don't ever claim that or tell people that. It's amazing. It does change the way that people see themselves. It helps them see themselves in a new light. And at the same time, if there are people who really just absolutely loathe and hate their body, I would suggest that they get help, from therapists, from professionals, because I'm not a therapist. I'm not professionally trained to help those, in circumstances. And so, yes, boudoir photography is an amazing opportunity to be able to see yourself differently. And also, I would suggest, people getting some extra help if they feel like that's what they need.
Of course. I'm going to ask a difficult question now.
Great.
In your experience, are there particular clients that aren't ready for this? And what does that look like so that somebody knows whether or not they're ready to take that step? Yeah. Is there particular concerns that you've seen that you would caution, or I'm kind of going out of thin air here. I just thought it would be a question to ask.
Yeah. So I would suggest, invite individuals to look at their reason for doing it. If they are hoping that it will completely save and fix their problems, then they might need to look at that and look at what they're hoping to experience and how they can find that, in whatever ways they need to.
Okay, so I want to clarify, because I think that's a great point. It kind of going along with what you just said a minute or so ago, is if you're coming into this thinking it's going to radically change you without any other work, don't be mistaken. It can help. It's a part of the process. Yeah. But if you're coming in with this hopes that it's going to change radically everything you think and see of yourself without doing the work being maybe more introspective, mindfulness therapy, whatever it is, this is just another step in that healthy development. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah. And so I think
you're not saying no, don't do it, but don't assume it's going to be.
Yeah. Take a look at your intention and your expectation, because if that's your expectation, then you might be disappointed. However, I would also say if somebody has a desire to do this, I would say that is an amazing starting point. Okay, if this is something that you want, then I would say, this is probably something that needs to happen. Maybe it's now or maybe it's later. I have some women in my Facebook group who have said, I'm not in a place, it scares me, but I hope that someday I will be. And that's totally fine. And, they follow along.
It's authentic. Yeah. They're being true to themselves. They're not just saying, okay, this will solve it, right?
Yeah.
And not being honest with themselves.
Yeah.
So carrying that authenticity in. Yeah. So if somebody is just doing this without, they're feeling pressured, they're feeling like it's the only way to do it, you're not saying don't do it, but be a little bit more aware of the goal here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you feel like you're having to drag yourself or you need me to drag you into it, then it might be, you might need some more time. But at the same time, it's perfectly normal for my clients to, book and then be like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And so it's normal to feel a little scared or nervous, and that's okay. And they, they keep moving forward, and, I help them, prep them up to their shoot. And then when they come, I'll have clients who are like, oh, I'm nervous, but I'm excited. And once we get into the session, I'm helping them. I show them exactly how to pose. Yeah. And it's just this fun, just amazing experience for all of us. So if someone is feeling nervous and feeling, I don't completely love my body, that is completely, totally normal.
I have maybe one last question here for you. You brought up earlier how it's improved your relationships. Yeah. Are you in a relationship right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me, a little bit more about that. I think that's important. How has understanding your sexuality, owning your own body, helped the relationship?
Yeah.
Give me some examples. I realize this is involving somebody else, so I want to be respectful to that. But
we're good. He's fine. So one thing is, as I learned my desires around my sexuality and released shame around those, that's also connected to the desires we have just in our normal lives. And I think for a lot of women, we find ourselves needing to clear through the beliefs of, I'm not allowed to have what I want, or I can't ask for what I want unless it's to bless and help others, or so many different things, or I should always be serving, or I should always be sacrificing. And so a huge thing with coming to embrace my desires and release the shame around those was seeing how that affects my relationship, realizing, last week my boyfriend, he was having just such a busy work week, and I was noticing these moments where I was bidding for attention, or and that's totally okay, that's fine. And also I'm realizing, okay, I can ask for, I can use my words and ask for what I need, or if he isn't in a space where he is able to fill that, I can fill that myself, because I am my own person. And so I have, in my head, I have my list of ways that I fill my needs. And so I'm like, okay, he's busy, he's totally understandable, and that's okay. I'm going to go take care of myself, take care of my needs. So
I want to be clear again here. Are we talking intellectual, sexual, all of the above?
All of the above. Emotionally, so with that experience last week, I was like, okay, I'm noticing I need connection. So if he isn't able to be in a place right now, that's okay. I can find connection with my friends or my sister or myself, And so some days I will realize, okay, my need for today is to be with myself. And it's like, oh, I need attention from myself, actually. So I'm going to go meditate. I'm going to go journal. I'll go take a bath, go paint my nails, whatever. And, or other days it'll be like, I need other people. I need connection with other human beings. And so that's going to be my boyfriend, or that's going to be my friend or my sisters, or, and so it has really helped me become aware of what I need and not, expect him to fill all of my needs for me, and realize that I get to do that.
I'm going to point out what I don't see it as a paradox, because I understand that we call that self-actualization.
Yeah.
You are your own person,
yeah.
Even in a relationship. The way you phrase that, though, I think some people, I think, struggle with it. I could get that connection somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Isn't that hurting the relationship? What are your thoughts? I don't want to put words in your mouth. No. Do you know where I'm going with this? Or does that make sense?
Yeah. So no, it doesn't hurt the relationship. No, it's that this is something that I love about my relationship, is that we both recognize, okay, we have needs, and the other person, we're capable of helping each other fill those needs. And also, we have created a safe space and trust with each other to be able to communicate, hey, sometimes if he and I are in an argument, I have an anxious attachment style. And so I'll be like, I need you to hold my hand. And sometimes
you communicate it.
Yeah. And sometimes though, he's like, I can't hold your, I'm not in a place where I can hold your hand right now. And I have to realize that's okay. And so I can hold space for him not being able to hold a space for my needs, if that makes sense. And that, because we know we can ask for what we want, and we can be okay with not, with the other person not being able to give it to us. And so that, we have so much trust in our relationship, and it's not draining, or, because we know
it's clear.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I love it.
I'm going to have to take you and him on a road show, because this is when I talk with couples, it is so far from what they expect. We use this word in a pejorative, and I think even your relationship, that's codependent in the sense of you understand each other. I don't know if codependent itself is a negative thing, but we do live in a way that's so codependent that if you're not experiencing what I'm experiencing when I need you to experience it, you are a manipulator. You are neglectful in our relationship. The way you just described it is, and forgive me, I'm not trying to put you on a pedestal, but the work you've done has clearly shown up in how you function as a relationship. And because of your self-actualization, of your individuality in the relationship, you have an identity. And we talk about, whether you're married or not, we talk about relationships as being one, and we misconstrue that as we have to be one in everything. No, you fell in love with each other because you're individuals. And you're able to sit there and say, I need this. You're not ready to give it to me. I respect that. But I was able to share it. And when you're ready, meet me where I'm at. And you are meeting each other at their, and that's where I think a lot of people, at least in our faith culture, see that as a paradox. It's like, no, I'm in a relationship with you and I have to be your, I am being your priority by recognizing I can't give this right now. And I want to be undivided with you. And I that is beautiful. So I'm going to, maybe I don't intend it for it to be a loaded question, but do you feel like the work you've done around your sexual health and your photography is why you can do that now? Oh, absolutely. Okay. I grew up, I was so codependent growing up. And, again, I have an anxious attachment style. Even a few years ago, I was in relationships and dating people where I was just like this energy vampire. I'm like, I need you to be this for me, and I need, and so I'm a completely different person and different in how I show up in my relationships. What a wonderful, wonderful discovery. And it's clear, just looking at you, you've done the work, you're authentic, you're real. We've covered a lot of topics here today. Yes. And I'm proud of you. And you did it so, it feels like it was you. I hope it was. Oh, absolutely. And any last thoughts or words that you feel like should be shared, whether it's with your work or your experience, anything? What do you feel like this audience of people struggling to know who they are should know? My hope is that those who are listening will be inspired and realize that they have what it takes to create the life that they want, the relationships that they want, whatever it is, career, that they can be their own person, that they get to show up as a beautiful, perfect in their growth, whole being. I love it. Thank you, Hope. I think you have, and I'm sure you get this a lot. I think you provided a lot of hope here. Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to hopefully doing a live question-and-A with you. I think absolutely. Our group members would really appreciate that. So awesome. Until then. Great. Thank you.